With a new arc being confirmed by Tui herself, there's even more potential for more creative stories to be shared from several different perspectives and tribes. Now, I've heard some people talk about really young dragonettes having their own stories, such as Auklet, Bumblebee, or even Cliff. Seeing how every arc so far has had a main cast of dragonettes, I don't see this being a far-fetched idea. In fact, I believe Tui would continue this trend because we would get completely different perspectives. These stories aren't in any particular order, but I believe I've saved the best for last. The stories I'll be covering today would be Auklet, Bumblebee, Cliff, like I mentioned before, and Mink and Dusky. Alright, let's begin. Auklet is the youngest daughter of the Seawing royal family. Her story would be incredibly interesting if she had to deal with the issues of being associated with popular figures. Let me explain. Auklet's mother, Queen Coral, is of course the queen of the Seawing Kingdom. Her eldest daughter, Sanami, was a Dragonette of Destiny and one of the founders of Jade Mountain Academy. Finally, her second eldest daughter, Anemone, was a well-known animist ever since Darkstalker's return. But what if Auklet was just an ordinary Dragonette? What if Auklet had no special Seawing powers? What if she had no aspiration to become a queen? It would be interesting to see how Tui would approach Auklet's perspective if she was just a shadow of her family's grand achievements. The duality between the extraordinary to the ordinary would be a good topic to tackle, which could potentially link with generational trauma. There is a possibility that Auklet may not want the throne for herself and just wants a simple life, away from all the status quo and unfairly high expectations. Honestly, I think it'd be really interesting because we haven't had any stories about generational trauma in the past. Cliff's story would also be interesting to follow, mainly because we see another Skywing perspective. Additionally, we would be revisiting the Skywing Kingdom. Maybe by following the young Dragonette, the audience will be able to see more of the kingdom's architecture, culture, and everyday lifestyle. Like how Smolder introducing Sunny to the Scorpion Den, we could have a similar scene in the Skywing Kingdom, which would be really good to further enhance the world of Wings of Fire. In terms of story though, there is one plot that could rival another story we've seen in the past. Because Cliff is Queen Ruby's son, he could potentially see the results of his mother's reign firsthand. In Arc 2, there was a clear division between those who supported Queen Scarlet and the rest who sided with Queen Ruby. In Cliff's story, I believe introducing an assassination plot against the Queen would make for an interesting narrative. Not only would it raise the stakes, but we could get a look at the more intricate systems in the Skywing Kingdom. Because of Cliff's extremely kind and adorable nature, it may cause him to change, to be a lot more confident or assertive when it's necessary. Moving on to Bumblebee. Bumblebee's perspective may be a bit more bland, mainly because she's very similar to Cricket. Cricket was a special Hivewing because she wasn't like every other Hivewing at birth. Bumblebee is kind of similar in the way that she's different because she's only been stung by Queen Wasp once. However, because she has only been afflicted once by the Queen, there could be some side effects from not receiving the second dose. Something like mind reading would make sense given that the powers were bestowed onto Queen Wasp, but we already had a perspective of a mind reader, so let's try something else. One idea I had was that Bumblebee would be affected by a terminal illness, but I felt that was a bit too morbid, especially for a newly introduced Dragonette. One idea that really stuck out was a plot that there are multiple Dragonettes who had only been stung once by Queen Wasp. Similar to the Hive Mind, these single stung Dragonettes could be linked in some way. Maybe Bumblebee's story could be her trying to find as many of these single stung Dragonettes and help them deal with these new powers. Ultimately, she would be forming a group that helps all of the Dragonettes that were afflicted by Queen Wasp's stinger. A satisfying ending for Bumblebee could include her being the most favored Dragonette to be the leader of this new group. It would be a great story about finding purpose in a world filled with so many different lifestyles and approaches. The next Dragonette could be Mink, the Icewing sister of Queen Snowfall. Ever since the final act of The Dangerous Gift, it's been made clear that the Icewing way of life has changed forever. With the new potential of new visitors, it could be natural for tribes to come visit the Icewing Kingdom. This includes the Pentalon tribes as well. However, with the abundance of introductions, I feel like Mink may be more interested in other friends. In The Dangerous Gift, we know that Mink is not your typical cold and cynical Icewing. She's an innocent Dragonette with a kind heart. Although she is one of the candidates for the Icewing throne, it's clear that she's not ready for the role. This could potentially scare her, driving her to be more meek and quiet around all types of dragons. Not only would this be a different perspective, but it could tie into a plot revolving around scavengers. Due to Mink's unique nature, she may shy away from different tribes and find refuge in playing with scavengers. Similar to Sky, Mink may even choose to befriend one who's in contact with Ren so that they can communicate. These actions, however, could definitely be seen as unnatural to the Icewings, which could have Mink be shadowed from the tribe. Although she's gained such a special bond, she may have had to sacrifice everything she knew about Icewing traditions. It would be a similar story to one found in the Wings of Fire guidebook with Prince Sawgrass and his siblings. Honestly, this was one of my more weaker ideas, but I think it would make for an interesting story in the arc. Finally, a story about Dusky would be a welcomed addition. Introduced in the Flames of Hope, Dusky is an extremely unique Silkwing. I believe Dusky, by far, has one of the most tragic stories that need to be told. Viewers' discretion is advised for this next bit because I'll be mentioning some themes about loss. So if you feel like you'll be uncomfortable listening to this next bit, I'll have a time code to skip to the end of the segment. I can imagine Dusky living his new life in either the Pyrian or Pentallan continent, struggling to find a foothold in this brand new world. He could be tormented by dreams of his past where he and his dad were together, but upon waking up, Dusky is depressed by the fact that his dad is no longer in this world. I believe Dusky's story would revolve around grief, and how he could approach a loss of a loved one. It's unclear how Dusky lost his father, or even if his father was deceased to begin with. However, seeing him attempt to deal with loss could lead to such a powerful story. Prey Hunter had traumatic dreams about his parents, but his story abruptly ended, courtesy of Thorn, so his story was never fully realized. So, having Dusky be the conduit for the story of loss could be an excellent move to even have more unique perspectives in this universe. Who knows, maybe in his narrative, Dusky could encounter a scavenger who had been orphaned. This may alleviate Dusky's negative prejudice around scavengers, as well as tie in loose ends about his past, and I won't lie, seeing Dusky's interactions with his dad would make the story so much more impactful. Now with all those perspectives covered, I think I can easily come up with a general theme for this arc. For Arc 1, a clear main theme of family and bonding was the core focus. Although I couldn't pinpoint a defined theme for Arc 2, it still had a pretty memorable adventure. Arc 3 generally had the theme of unity, with all the freedom imagery and tearing down defensive walls motif. Seeing the trends of ideas in this video, I believe the suitable theme could revolve around change or discovery. Auckland may embrace the theme of change to avoid the expectations of being the Sea-Wing heir. Additionally, Cliff's narrative could be centered around discovering the complex structure of ex-Queen Scarlet's rebellion forces. Bumblebee could be forced to change her way of life because of the new group she forms with other single-stung Hivewings. Mink's discovery of scavengers will lead to a momentous change on a gigantic scale, both with internal relations and continent-wide research. And finally, Dusky's stories would encourage him to change, both in finding closure about his dad's disappearance and coexisting with scavengers in Pentala. And of course, these dragons would need a symbolic name tying them all together. I was workshopping a few names like the Dragonets of Discovery, or perhaps the Couriers of the Continents. Something really cheesy like that. Now that's all the conceptual ideas I had about the 4th arc of Wings of Fire. If you yourself have any ideas about these newer Dragonets, let me know in the comments. What do you want to see in the 4th arc of Wings of Fire? Subscribe for more Wings of Fire, and as always, thanks for listening.